Welcome to Two Doctors Homestead. My name's Daniel,
And I'm Janet.
and this is Coffee Talk. And today we're going to talk about starting your garden in 2023. But before we get into that, I wanted to give a shout out to Black Rifle Coffee Cactus Squatch. I think it's our favorite.
That's my favorite Black Rifle, yeah.
Right, favorite coffee in general. And as a company, they have a great mission. They support law enforcement, military, veterans, first responders. So by buying the coffee from them, you're supporting their mission. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a great company, great coffee. We really enjoy it, and we're not sponsored yet
No,
by Black Rifle Coffee.
that's a good coffee, though.
It's good coffee. All right, so on gardening, it's getting to be that time. It's getting to be that time of the year
Yeah.
to start thinking about your garden. You're growing your seeds. There's a great resource, and we can put a link in the description, www.almanac.com. And if you put in your zip code there, it'll actually give you planting times for your area, right? So you can see when you want to start your seeds indoors, when you want to look at moving those seeds outside. It shows you when you want to plant outside, and it
I
actually
wonder
goes
if they
through.
still make the book version of the Farmer's Almanac.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can certainly buy the almanac if you want.
Yeah.
You know, I think maybe we'll get one this year just to have it. But if you want to go on their website, you know, it shows you for a wide variety of different garden plants, vegetables, when to start planting them. And a lot of the stuff we're in Zone 8, and a lot of stuff's coming up February 22nd or later for starting your seeds indoors, and things going into March for starting the plants outside.
Yeah.
So it's a great resource, and it's getting to be that time, that time of year. Certainly for us, it was a pretty mild winter down here. So, I mean, I'm ready to plant now, but we're going to follow the almanac. We got to wait a little while, but not long.
I'm always cautious.
Right, always cautious, yeah. First thing to think about on planting is when to start planting. If you plant before the last freeze, a good freeze can wipe out your garden.
Right.
Right, whether you started from seeds or whether you're buying plants, good freeze will wipe them out. And I think that's happened to us, and it's probably happened to a lot of people.
Well, and you could put covers on it, but the amount, the size of our garden, I mean, it's just not feasible to put crop cover down to save from a freeze.
Exactly.
The problem with Texas also, and it might be in your region, is we get some very heavy rains.
Yeah.
You know, our spring brings rains that could wipe out just a little baby plant.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So you want to be careful when you start. So the almanac gives dates based on historical data. Mm-hmm. Generally, the idea is 2 weeks. 2 weeks after the last freeze.
Yeah.
Hard to know when that last freeze is going to be. Right. That's the one that could sneak up and get you. And
Right. Mother Nature's tricky.
Every once in a while, you get that last freeze. So almanac's a good resource.
It has been for years. Upon years and
years.
Yes.
Yeah, these guys have been doing it
This
a
is
long time.
Some proven stuff. So
Right,
yeah.
they've been doing it a long time. And once again, you can give it for free. You just go to their website, you put in your zip code, and it gives you a great guide to follow. And if you're worried, add a week or two. Like, you know where you live. If you think a freeze is coming, don't plant yet.
Right, yeah, you know your region best.
Right. Yep, absolutely. So we wanted to give some tips, some quick tips. Everyone's got their quick tips for starting your garden, especially this year. First one is location. If you don't have a garden already, location's really important.
Right.
You know, you need sunshine. A lot of plants need sunshine.
And some plants, you know, and that really depends on if you're going to go from a seed packet or from a seed or a plant that's started.
Yeah.
Little tab they put in there. Some of them don't do well with, you know, all day sun.
Right.
So they might burn out.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
it really depends. You might want to get a couple locations ready for your garden. One that has the amount of sun that most of them need. But if you're going to grow crops that need a tiny bit of shade, you might want to use shade screens because they do have that.
Right.
Or pick another location on your property.
Yeah,
Too,
location's
for a
important.
garden that things need a little bit of time from the sun.
Absolutely. And if your location floods a lot, that might not be a good location. If you got an area of your yard, like we have a couple low spots on our property, probably not the best spot to plant your garden. You don't want to get flooded out. And then also be aware, you probably have to water your garden. So you don't want your garden to be an acre or, 1,000 yards or whatever away from your water source.
Right.
Because you're going to have to water it maybe every day, depending on what you're growing and what the conditions are. You're going to have to water it, and that's part of picking that location beyond sunlight and shade. You're going to be walking there all the time. You're going to need to have water there. You don't usually need electricity in your garden, but certainly access to water. You don't want to be carrying 5-gallon buckets of water.
No.
Out to your
And you don't
garden.
want to be running, 500 feet of hose out there
Right.
either, because your water pressure by the
You
time
just
you get
won't have
out
the
there is
water
going to be
pressure.
a trickle, and
Yeah.
that'll be frustrating as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And there may be some geographic areas. I lived in the Pacific Northwest for a while that rains all the time, and you don't have to worry about water.
Right.
But in general, you want to be aware of that. And you also want the
Mm-hmm.
garden close enough that you can go out and be like, hey, we're making dinner. I'm going to go get some peppers out of the garden.
Yeah, that's the
Right?
best
You
part of
want it to be
gardening.
accessible. Yeah, we
Yeah.
do that all the time.
Making
Best part of
breakfast,
gardening.
can you pick me some peppers?
Right, let's go grab some peppers. Let's see
Mm-hmm.
what's in the garden. We're not sure what to have for dinner, so let's just go look at what's in the garden and we'll grab that.
Yeah.
So location is very important. Keep it close to home. The next thing are the types of plants to grow. I like the idea of a theme garden, especially if you're getting started out. You could do, if you don't have a huge space, you could do a salsa garden. You could do a salad garden, right? And say, I'm just going to grow stuff to make a salad.
Right. I'm all
Yeah.
over the place.
Oh, yeah, and
I
that's
garden
okay.
totally opposite of you.
Right. Yeah.
You always have your little areas where you're like, this is a salsa. I'm like ADD gardener. I put
Yeah.
melons because I like melons,
Right.
and I do like none of my stuff really matches, but to me it matches because I'll eat all of it.
Well, and that's the other important part of what you grow is grow stuff you're going to eat. Now, you might, if you have space, do some experimenting. We
Yeah.
buy seeds. We don't always know what the end product's going to be. So there's going to be some unknowns you grow,
Yeah.
but don't grow stuff you're not going to eat.
Unless you have animals and they're
Right,
gonna
unless
eat
you
it.
have animals, they're going to eat it. Like we
Yeah.
did that with okra one year.
Yeah.
We never really eat okra. We grew okra, and we still didn't eat okra.
No.
We had okra.
I-
We
yeah.
had like
I'm
we were
not a
getting
fan,
okra every day. It
which
grows
is
great
probably
here.
pulling your southern card if you don't like okra.
Right,
but I'm
right.
just not. I
Yeah.
like pickled okra, but
Yeah. Like we were growing okra and we were harvesting it every day, and we're like, okay, what do we do with that now?
like
we
I'm
don't.
so tired of okra.
We don't only eat okra, right?
Yeah.
So-
And the chickens didn't even want the seeds that came in
Yeah,
okra,
yeah, the
which you
chickens
think
weren't
because the
super
chickens
excited
would be
about it.
super excited. They weren't.
Yeah.
But,
So in general, you want to grow stuff you like to eat.
right.
Yeah.
And I grow pumpkins every year for my pigs
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
chickens.
Yeah.
Because I don't eat pumpkin. Realistically, if you're going to grow a pumpkin, you should grow like a sugar baby pumpkin or something, and they're a lot smaller,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and that's your type of eating pumpkin.
Yeah.
It's sweeter and it's lower in water content.
Mm-hmm.
But I just like to grow the big pumpkins
Right.
and the white pumpkins that I still have back there. I haven't eaten them, but they've gone to the animals, and the
Right,
animals
we
have
give them to
enjoyed
the chickens, love them. The pigs love them.
them. Yeah.
Yeah. Lots
And they're
of.
fun to watch grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Then another factor is soil. Good soil is important, right? The potting soil you buy at the hardware store, the gardening supply store, it's probably sterile.
Yeah, it's sterile.
Right.
It has to be because, they don't want the liability of, bringing stuff into other people's areas,
Right.
So they just, I don't want to say radiate, but they do whatever
Yeah.
they do to make it pretty sterile.
Right,
There's no
pretty sterile.
microbes
You don't
left
want
in
weeds
there.
growing in
Yeah.
there. There's no microbes left in there. So as you're buying soils, if you have to buy soils, you might not have to buy soils depending on what your ground looks like. Just be aware you may need to amend that soil. We do a lot with the animal manures to
Right.
supplement our soil, whether it's the chicken dirt we call it. Basically we do deep litter on the chickens and we scoop it out. We put that in the garden and that helps fertilize the garden. Or when we have the pigs, we let the pigs in the garden and they help
Right.
fertilize the garden.
Right.
But soil's a big factor. It's important.
Yeah, it's huge. And it really depends on your plant too. Tomatoes like a different soil for acidity level than say cucumbers do.
Right.
So if you really want to get down and dirty with it, you can do soil testing. and you can get a soil test for really cheap at any nursery.
Yeah.
And you can just, test your
See
soil
what's
to
going
see.
on with my soil.
And then you can plant accordingly to your areas, and then you can amend, like you could put, soda ash or whatever
Right,
with your
peat moss or
tomatoes.
soda ash
And
or
calcium
anything,
with your
right.
tomatoes, and which, something like a pumpkin might not like.
Yeah.
So, you can, or you could just, throw some chicken dirt on it. and
Right,
see
chicken
how
dirt on it,
goes.
and that works too, yeah. But you want to be aware, soil's an important part, right? The
Yes.
plants grow in the soil, they absorb their nutrients from the soil.
Mm-hmm.
That goes into the vegetables and the food that you're eating.
Yeah.
But without those nutrients in the soil, without the microbes, you're not going to
You're
grow
not
a
gonna
lot.
have a good product. And
Yeah.
that is the problem with our commercial farming right now, is our soils are just so dead.
Yeah.
We don't have the nutrients and microbes in the earth right now to really produce plants like we produced 100 years ago.
Right.
So many people, due to price and because they want a better product, are gardening themselves because they can take their little patch of land. It hasn't had Roundup thrown on it
Right.
for years upon
Right.
years. It's still alive,
Yeah.
and you can get a better product out of
You get a
that.
better product. And you get better variety, right? You
Right,
get much
yeah,
better variety.
like just even peppers wise, like every year we grow purple peppers, we grow candy cane peppers, which
Yeah.
are great because by the time they ripen, they're red and white striped like candy canes, and they have a little bit of a different flavor than a bell pepper. So you can get so many different varieties. Like this
Yeah.
year I got seeds for black tomatoes.
Right.
Just
Right, why not?
sometimes it's
Yeah,
just
you gotta have
fun,
fun,
just
right,
to
you wanna
have
have
fun
fun with
stuff.
it, yeah.
I got some watermelon seeds that when you cut the watermelon open, it actually looks like a cantaloupe. It's
Yeah.
like an orangey yellow color
Right.
inside, but it tastes like a watermelon. So, it's seeds that were from another area of the world. But that's the fun about gardening, because even though we have a global marketplace,
Mm-hmm.
we still have our vegetables have to travel to a certain distance to still
Right.
be fresh.
Right, right.
So being able to get a seed from Taiwan
Mm-hmm.
and then grow that type of cucumber here, you can do that. The seed travels well, so then
Yeah.
you can do it in your
And
own
you can
yard.
actually have a variety. You go to the grocery store, there's a limited space, so there's a limited number of tomatoes, and here's your lettuce.
Right.
What you can grow and what's available to you is just so far beyond anything you're going to be able to buy
Absolutely.
locally. You
Yeah.
have those options. Last year we did those lemon cucumbers.
Yes.
And those were really
Oh my
good, those
gosh,
tiny
those are
little
like
lemon
my favorite.
cucumbers.
They look like a lemon, but
Yeah.
they have little stripes on them, and they were the best tasting cucumber.
Right, right.
Their skin was pretty thin too, so you didn't have to peel them. They were really
They
good.
were really good.
It
They were
just
really
had a
good,
hint,
yeah,
just like a
yeah.
little hint of lemon in it.
Right, right. And then another one is seeds or plants, right? Do you want to plant seeds? Do you want to start from seeds, or do you want to buy the plants? And I think some of that comes from experience, right? Is if you've never gardened before, starting from seeds indoors might be too much.
Yeah,
might
it could be a little daunting.
It could be a little daunting, yeah. And then long term, some plants do better from seeds. Some plants you're
Yeah.
only going to get from seeds. Like even if you go to your garden store, if you go to Home Depot or whatever, you're going to have a limited supply in the garden section compared to what you could get as seeds.
Right.
Right, so going
Because
seeds.
again, you can order seeds and they're gonna come
Yeah,
from anywhere.
right, yeah. Going the seed route is more work, but you're going to have much more variety.
Going the seed route is more self-sustainable.
It is, absolutely, because you can, once you're done, you can seed save.
Correct.
Yeah, if you just buy the plants, it may be a great way to get into gardening if you've never gardened before, is you can buy your plants, you can plant your plants, and they're already ready to go, and if you assume if they're at the local
Right,
garden
somebody
supply.
else did the work for you.
Someone else did the work for
Yeah.
you. If they're at the local garden supply, they're probably good for your area, which isn't always true, but in general, you kind of assume
You
hey,
would hope.
this must grow well here. So certainly if you're getting started out, or if you just don't have the time or the space to grow from seeds,
Yeah.
that's an option. You can
Absolutely.
just get the plants.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
gardened my whole life. I remember
Right.
growing up when my grandfather had a massive garden and being little and going through and helping him with his garden.
Yeah.
So, you can, I still at times are like, no, I really am fascinated with that type of starter plant that
Mm-hmm.
is at the nursery and I grab it, because
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with
Right.
grabbing a plant that you want.
That you see, yeah, that you like, and it's already ready
Yeah.
to go. So I would say always a mix, and really depends. Then you have to look at your growing season, what grows well in your area. If you live in a place that has a very short growing season, you're not going to want to plant stuff that takes a long time to grow.
Right.
Right? So you want to match your growing season, and then there's the idea of staggering plants, and something we do. For example, you could start with beans, or you could start with corn, and you could come in later with something like the melons, or come in later in the season with your pumpkins.
With your pumpkins,
Right?
yeah.
You don't always start everything at the same time.
Right.
And just because you started the season with one plant doesn't mean you can then come back in later.
Yeah, because you
Right.
have cooler season crops.
Right.
So you're gonna either do that in spring or fall,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're gonna have your crops that are gonna have to be put in maybe like late spring, just so they can germinate by the time fall hits.
Right. Yeah.
And produce you some type of fruit or vegetable that's on it. So,
Right,
yeah.
absolutely. So you want to plan. It's not just a once and done.
No,
kind of situation with
gardening is very
planting.
complicated.
Yeah, it's very complicated.
Yeah.
It's not just a one and done. Like, okay, I started my garden, I planted all my stuff, I'm done. I'll come back later and get my vegetables.
Right.
You can get different plants and different seeds, and you can stagger them where you're going to plant them based on, hey, this area of my garden has more sunlight. Maybe this has a little bit of shade.
Right.
We're going to do these first, and then we're going to come back in a couple months with this one. I think it's worth spending that time to start planning it out and lay out what you're going to do, where and when.
Yeah. I mean, it's a commitment.
Yeah.
If you could easily just grow stuff and, you just start off with doing the best you can, because that's what everybody does.
Yeah.
But, you're not going to be an expert gardener at year 2.
Right.
You're not going to be an expert gardener at year 10.
Yeah.
You're going to know stuff about a lot of things and what works for you. But, gardening is one of those things that is just kind of like ever evolving.
Yeah.
Because there's so many variables to it. There's the plant, there's where's your soil at, there's where's the weather.
Yeah.
There's a lot of variables that go into it. So it has to be something that you enjoy. It has to be fun and exciting for you to go through it. You're not just going to throw seeds in the ground, like you said, and come back and, there's a jungle in your
3
backyard.
months, right.
Ever.
Yeah.
You're just
All
going
right.
to constantly be picking tomatoes off that
Right,
plant. It's a
right.
commitment. You can't
Yeah.
just toss and go.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But it's worth, as they say,
It's
the
well
fruits of
worth
your
it.
labor.
Right, fruits of the
Because
labor.
it is better than anything you can get in the store.
Yeah, it tastes better than it's at the store, and depending on how you do it, you can save money. I mean, if you're
Yeah, absolutely. You can
Right.
have one pepper plant that gives
Right.
you 50 peppers.
right 50 peppers, and if you're starting from seeds and you're not going crazy, kind of the next thing I would say on raised beds, containers, that kind of thing. If you're not spending a ton of money getting fancy indoor grow systems or the
Yeah.
latest trendy grow pod thing outside, if you're not throwing a ton of money getting set up, and then you're not just buying plants, like if you spend a lot of money on the garden, it's possible to do, you may end up in a situation where you're never going to get your money back
Right.
because you've spent so much money getting set up. Versus if you grow from seeds, if you're careful on how you build your garden, how you grow your garden, how you amend your soil, I think you can save money.
You can
gardening.
absolutely save money gardening. Unless you want to have an Instagram garden.
Right.
If you're
Right.
looking to have the prettiest thing that you can take pictures of and show off on the internet,
Yeah.
that's not what gardening is.
Right, right.
It's just, it doesn't have to be pretty.
Yeah.
It just has to be an environment that's perfect for your plants. They
Right.
don't care if it's ugly or pretty.
Yeah.
They're gonna grow in the best environment.
Right,
I think a
right,
lot of times
absolutely.
we get real wrapped up on how it looks.
How it looks, right.
It's really about how it tastes.
Right, it's how it tastes, yeah, not how it looks. And, we started, we have a 35 by 50 garden right now. There's an area for grapes. We have areas with trellises. We have raised beds. We started out just going straight in the ground, right?
Right, I
the
row
first year
cropped
we
for a
row
couple
cropped
of
the first,
years.
yeah, in the beginning we row cropped. We have flooding, right? We found we got flooding in that area, so we switched to raised beds. And the raised beds help with any kind of flooding because then the water can go out and around the raised beds, and the plants are raised up, and the raised beds themselves don't get
Right.
so much flooding, but you don't have it getting washed out. So raised beds certainly help.
Well, it was nice because we used our soil for the raised beds. We pulled in to the area the soil that was there and existing, and we
Right.
dropped
The walkway
our
areas,
walkways
yeah.
because we knew the area had a tendency
Right.
to flood.
Right.
So I would prefer the walkways to flood because I can wear some rubber boots and I have
Right,
no
it doesn't
problem
really
with
matter.
that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But my raised beds don't wash out.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to build a raised bed and then get yards and yards of soil that
Mm-hmm.
could be sterile and put it in there. We worked a long time on that soil, and when I say long time, like 2-3 years of amending and dumping stuff on it to get it to where we wanted it. And then we needed to be able to keep that soil and pulled it in. So
Right.
again, it doesn't have to be pretty,
Right, it doesn't have to be the prettiest thing.
but it works.
Right, absolutely. You know, and you can do, there's a lot of varieties and a ton of options, especially if you're starting your
yeah.
garden, you want to build up your garden. You know, you can do beds on stands, you can have hanging plants, you can do trellises, you know, a lot of ideas on what you can do on your garden. I would say just be aware of, you know, start out thinking what kind of plants are you going to grow? What do those plants
Right.
need? Not every plant needs a trellis. You know, some plants need a trellis. Right, think about the kind of plants, how you want to space them out, and don't, you know, especially in the beginning, don't go crazy and try to plant 30 different plants in a tiny little, you know, 3x5 planting bed.
Right. They
Right,
need,
that's never
they need
gonna
room
work.
to
They do
breathe
need room, yeah.
and grow out.
Right, I would say especially starting out, keep it simple, right? Start pick
Yes.
a couple plants that you want to grow, and that's what I was saying, a theme. You know, start out simple. Don't overload your bed. That's always the temptation as you go to the garden store and you're like, hey, I got 20 pepper plants, and you get home and you're like, wait, my bed's not big enough. So now you've got all these plants jammed in.
Right.
And they're going to be fighting to survive. They're going to be fighting,
Right. They
growing
need air
over each other.
circulation
Yeah.
and you need room to harvest.
Right. Yeah, you need to be able to get into it to
Always
harvest
remember
it.
your room to harvest.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, but you get that's because you get excited.
Right, you get excited, right? You're like, hey, I look
You're
at all these great
excited
plants.
about
This is gonna be
gardening.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get overtaken by it, and you're like, but I could do all these great plants.
Right.
And then reality hits in, and maybe your garden's not big enough for those
Right.
plants.
That's okay. If your garden's not big enough for those plants and you don't want to spend a lot of money, maybe try going to a secondhand store or Goodwill or something like that. There might be pots there.
Yeah, there
a
could
lot
be
of stuff
pots
can be
there.
potted.
Right, absolutely.
And you can grow a tomato plant in a pot just
Yeah.
as
And it
easily as you
doesn't
can
have
grow
to
it in
be
the
in your
ground.
garden, right.
So if you've bought too much and it overspills, that's all right. Just see if you can get some pots cheap.
Right, get some pots, and we have a couple different areas. We have our garden, but we're growing kale indoors
Right.
now, and we've got grow bags we were doing for our fall garden and for potatoes.
Yeah.
So you can
If-
move things around a little bit.
If you can't afford pots, just you know what, save your boxes. I mean, everybody buys so
Right.
much stuff on the internet.
Yeah.
Double that box up, put some
Yeah.
soil in it.
Yeah.
The box is going to degrade as you water it. But if you put 2 or 3 boxes stacked in each other and you put some soil in it, it'll probably last the
Right, it
season.
might get you through some
It might
trash
get you
bag
through
in
the
it or
season.
something like that.
Yeah, you could put a
Right, you
trash
can be
bag in the
creative.
bottom with the whole right.
Right.
You know, that stuff is free if you bought something and it came in a box.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. All right, I think that's all I had.
Oh, did you talk about seeds though? Like what kind of seeds?
No,
you
let's talk
have?
about what kind of seeds.
Okay, because I mean, if you're going to get seeds, or even if you're going to get plants, you're going to want to check to see, like, if you're going to seed save, you need to make sure those are heirloom seeds.
Right, heirloom, right.
They
No, I
have to.
didn't think about
yeah,
that.
they have to be heirloom. So if you want to be self-sustainable and make sure that you can pull your seeds from your vegetable or fruit or whatever it is and be able to dry those out and plant them again next year, they have to be heirloom.
Yeah.
You know, so you're going to want to make sure that it says that, because a hybrid is, you know, 2 different parent plants that they crossed to make, you know, another plant that's going to give you both characteristics of, like, you know, the mom and dad plant.
Right.
But you're not going to be able to breed those true.
Yeah.
You know, multiple iterations of those, maybe if it's a 20-year-old hybrid, the company may have been able to get it to where it breeds true.
Yeah.
But most of them are, you know, brand new on the market. That is not
Right.
going to breed true. When you seed save it, it's not going to breed
Yeah,
true.
yeah. And seed saving is one of those things, as we said, will start making it more profitable.
Right.
Right, you're not having to rebuy your plants every year, and you're not even having to rebuy your seeds every year. If you
Right.
take the time to save your seeds of the plants you like and the plants that do well.
Right. I loved those white
Yeah.
pumpkins that I had, and I bought heirloom seeds, so I seed saved to get those for next year. And now the
Right.
best way to seed save that I think is you take your best ones that you have. Like if you got a pumpkin that was like the biggest one that you wanted,
Right.
take seeds from that biggest one and a couple other big ones.
Right, you don't want to just take from one plant.
You don't want to just
Yeah.
take from one,
Yeah.
and you don't want to take from the smallest
Right,
either, because then they might have the characteristics of what that came up
Yeah,
as. You know,
yeah.
you're going to want to take genetically the best ones
Right.
that are possible.
Right.
And if you do GMO seeds, which honestly I don't have a problem with GMO seeds. I know people have problems with GMOs, but GMOs are where they took something in a lab and then they spliced it into the genes.
right.
Now that's not going to breed true either.
Yeah,
So
right,
you
no,
seed save
no,
from
that will
that,
not breed
and you're
true.
not going to breed true.
Right,
You
that's
might
the
not even
farthest thing
get.
from heirloom.
You might not. Yeah, right. You might not even
Yeah.
get fruit from that.
Right, right.
But the benefit of a GMO is that they're going to be more whatever they modified it to.
Mm-hmm.
And traditionally, what they modify it to is for it to either produce more
Yeah.
or be resistant of
Right, more
pests.
resilient, yeah.
Yeah, more resilient.
And the same thing's true on seed saving from fruit, vegetables you've gotten from the grocery store. It
Right.
might work.
It might work, but it might not,
might
because
not.
if you think of the business
Yeah.
aspect of it, farmers are going to likely use a seed that's genetically modified. Say you take corn, well, corn gets those worms in them very
Yeah.
easily,
Right.
and it'll ruin a whole crop. But a genetically modified corn seed a lot of times has that BT in it, which is a very long two words, which is organic. BT is an organic bacteria that's found in nature.
Yeah.
But what it does is it kills worms, army worms. It
Right,
kills those
right.
nasty little worms
Yeah.
that try to go at your tomatoes all the time.
Yeah.
Well, that is modified and spliced into the corn seed.
Mm-hmm.
So when that corn grows, it already is going to be resistant to any type of worms because it's in the whole structure of the plant now.
Yeah.
So if it goes in there and it tries to take a bite of a kernel, it's dead.
Right.
So those are the modifications that have been made over the years, but it's not going to breed true.
Yeah.
But what it's
Yeah.
going to do is it's going to have a higher yield of
Right.
crop for
Right.
farmers.
Yeah.
Because heirloom, those are plants that have been around for generations upon generations.
Yeah.
And they have been bred from a seed that
Yeah.
breeds true of its parent plant.
Right.
So, I mean, if you get a tomato that's an heirloom tomato, you know that the way that tomato tasted is relatively how its offspring is going to
Right,
taste.
it's gonna be consistent, and the
It's gonna be
advantage of seed
consistent.
saving year after year after year is you're actually evolving the plants to grow in your garden.
Right, you're
taking the
keeping that good
plants-
genetic line
Right,
too
you're taking
going.
the plants that grew well, you're saving those seeds, you're replanting them, and the plants sort of improve themselves over time.
Yes, as long as you take your best piece of the crop.
Right.
It's almost like breeding dogs or breeding chickens, you
Right.
know. You're going to breed the best of your animals as a breeding pair so you can have the higher probability of getting the best offspring. And
Yeah.
it's just like that with seed
With the
savings.
seed saving,
You want
yeah.
to take your best and
Right.
you want to take the seeds from that and you want to use that to plant.
And use that again.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
That was my little seed thing.
Yeah, no, that's
I mean,
good,
you can
that's good.
also get plants that say heirloom on them too.
Right, absolutely, yeah, yeah, you
And
buy
then
the
you
heirloom
can seed
plants, you
save
buy
from
the heirloom
that.
seeds.
Yeah,
Yeah, and as I said, sometimes stuff at the grocery store will work, not all the time.
not all the time.
Not all the
yeah.
time, and that's just really where you're coming from. If that's the best you can do and you want a garden, then do it. Save the
Yeah.
seeds from the tomatoes, plant them, and it might work.
Yeah,
You just don't know the history of the seeds.
Mm-hmm.
Are they heirloom? Are they treated? Are they GMO? You just don't know if it's
Right.
going to grow true. But if that's the best you can do, then certainly do it.
right.
You know?
And if you want to farm organically, garden
Yeah.
organically, then you can use organic stuff.
Yeah.
If you don't, you could use 7 to knock down,
Mm-hmm.
pests. It really is up to you, your area, what you want to do.
Yeah.
But there are organic compounds out there that you spray in your garden that's still going to kill a bee.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the most important thing is if you want to start using stuff on your garden, because inevitably you're going to have to, because that's when pests come in. You know, it's, if you have a good environment and you have a lot of growth, you're gonna see pests that come in because that's just the natural cycle. They're gonna be attracted to the food, just like you are.
Yeah.
So you just wanna make sure that you read, because a lot of the stuff, you know, might hurt, you know, a honeybee or a regular bee.
Right, and
Even
we
if
need
it's
bees.
organic, it
Yeah.
can still do that.
Yeah, we need bees.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that's
That was
all
all
good.
mine, yeah.
All right. Well, we appreciate you. Thanks for watching our gardening coffee talk, having coffee with us today, and thank you for watching.